Joining us to talk about the inauguration and much, much more, WGN political analyst and host of the Political Report, Paul Lising.
Another busy week.
I was going to say every week, every Friday when we meet with you.
Right.
Let's start off locally because
Sure.
Trump vowed to have mass deportations the first day, and now the Wall Street Journal is reporting that they're going to start on Tuesday, one of the coldest days of the year. Well, if not the coldest day of the year. And Brandon Johnson, Pritzker pushing back, said no one is going to cooperate with ICE for something
So
like
here's
this.
the thing. First of all, it should not be a surprise that Chicago is the top of the list for the very reason you just said, because Governor Pritzker and Mayor Johnson are sort of like, you have to go through me first. And, for the Trump administration, that's not a threat. That's just okay, we'll take you up on that. So that shouldn't be a surprise. I mean, we might want to question if the effort is to tackle the undocumented people who are in this country, Texas, Arizona. There's other border states where they could be going, but they don't want to go there, right? Those are essentially red states, and so they're coming here.
Is it because of the whole deal about Sanctuary City with Lori Lightfoot starting in it?
And I think what's going to happen, Micah, is there's going to be the confrontation. Not necessarily a violent or physical confrontation, but here's the thing. What I'm waiting to see is whether, at that time, President Trump declares the immigration situation a national emergency. If he does that, then he can federalize the Illinois State Guard troops, National Guard troops. And once he does that, he can order the Illinois National Guard to go to churches or schools, wherever it is he's planning to go, along with ICE officials and all that. Now, of course, the Cook County sheriffs and the Chicago cops, who are not supposed to be part of that process, it would just be a confrontation. What would the stand down be? I don't know. I guess we'll see. You'd like to think that all of that kind of thing would be avoided one way or another, but certainly that is something that the new president wants to see on his first day, because that's why he picked Chicago.
Sounds like chaos.
And some Democratic leaders, including the mayor of New York, Eric Adams, have said they're willing to discuss some of these things with Trump. Mayor Adams has gone to Mar-a-Lago or is planning to. Nothing like that happening with our political leaders.
And I'm sure the fact that Mayor Adams is under indictment and might be looking for a pardon from the president has nothing to do with that, but it's certainly worth talking about. And then here you had Alderman Ray Lopez and a colleague who basically said, look, let's put something before the city council on Wednesday. Let's give them who they want that we know are the true criminals, and we'll be protecting the others. They didn't get much support for that on city council. So the city council stands by this sanctuary city status and defending the city. And I don't know. We may be talking about it as the weeks go. Maybe it'll all blow over. Maybe it won't happen. I don't know. We're going to find out in a couple of days.
Okay, confirmation hearings this week in D.C. One of the big things that stood out is Senator Tammy Duckworth and Pete Hegseth going at it on the floor.
She is, like her or not like her, man. I don't ever want to get her mad because she can pretty much take anybody down, and she exhibited that this time. And she was not the only one who would ask a question. What are the 3 countries that are part of this, whatever? And have you ever conducted an audit? That's the one that's been getting a lot of play.
The Rolling Stones even did a piece on it tonight. Yeah.
And of course, listen, he's a TV host, right? So he's dancing around the question, talking about audits, and she's like, did you do an audit? And would not let up. And it's gotten just a ton of play. The bottom line is, her mission was to show that Hegseth, it's not just a character issue. There's enough questions about that, about sexual allegations, harassment allegations, all these things he's denied.
Alcohol abuse.
Exactly. So he's denied all of that. But Tammy Duckworth basically saying, no, you're not qualified. That's the issue that I have. But of course, the magic thing that happened for him was that Senator Joni Ernst, who served in the military herself with great pride, and she was very concerned about his positions about women in the military. He's flipped on that. Joni Ernst announced that night, I think, after the hearing, I'm good with this and I'm going to support him. That basically removes the argument for other Republicans who might have wanted to line up behind her. It was reported that she was basically being told, you do this, we're going to primary you, you're going to be in big trouble. And apparently she said to her staff something along the lines of, how do I make this stop? Well, she figured out a way to make it stop. Get in.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, if we want to move on, or do you have another question on it? On the inauguration, obviously that's going to be the big story in the early part of next week. What does this mean to have it moved inside? Trump is all about the majesty of the presentation on the Capitol steps. He made a big stink about making sure that the flags were flying at full staff.
Yeah.
Now he's not going to have any of that.
So the fact that the last time it was indoors about 40 years ago, right? It was Ronald Reagan, 1985, when we had this kind of weather. The bottom line is it's a safety issue, and Secret Service has to do what they're going to do. I am sure he will find a way to spin this. I mean, look, he's the master of that. So whether it will be the largest crowd ever inside the Capitol or the largest crowd watching at an arena that's about 10 minutes away, all of that will be spun accordingly, but this is what has to happen. You know, it's not even just Trump when they talk about this weather. Joe Biden's got some age on him. There's some elderly people who are going to be out there.
Bill Clinton
and I
will
think
be out there,
exactly,
George
and he
Bush.
was just in the hospital.
Right.
So it's pretty much the thing that has to be done. But there's no question we'll get something from him because, again, the flags are at half-mast for people who forgot because Jimmy Carter passed
Right.
away and President Biden ordered them flown at half-mast for 30 days. That's what happens when a president dies, and Trump was very upset about that. I know Ron DeSantis in Florida ordered those flags flown at half-staff, but he's gotten it done in Washington as well.
We were together the other night when President Biden gave his fond farewell, 18 minutes or so, giving a lot of warnings and things like that. But since that time, he's done a lot of pardons, up to 2,500 pardons of
Yes.
people. More to come.
Nonviolent
drug-related
yes,
charges. But more things they say are going to happen before Sunday. What do you think?
Well, something else that he did today was he issued an order, not an executive order, but he issued, an opinion.
Right.
He issued an
ERA.
opinion that the ERA is law, that it passed. Now, that's going to come under a lot of challenge, although I don't know if I want to be the senator or the the representative who says, no, we're not going to pass it. Who's going to say no to equal rights? But they will. The issue I had with this is, look, this was introduced 50 years ago, and it actually passed finally. You needed 38 states to do it. Virginia passed it in 2020. Since that time, about 5 states have pulled out of it. But there's nothing in the law that says a state can't pull out. I mean, basically, the Biden administration position is, no, this is law now. It's been 50 years, things have happened, but it is law. Bottom line is it's going to have to go to the courts.
Why didn't
the
he do
courts
it
are going to have to
before,
decide.
though? Why didn't he
Well,
say it
I
before?
meant to sort of say that's one of the questions I have. If it passed in 2020, he was in office.
Yeah.
It started, 2021. So why he didn't in 22 or 23, and then have the court argument go on at that time. But he didn't. But I know there were a lot of people hoping that he would do this before he left office. He at least has done that.
We've talked a lot about the TikTok
Oh,
ban as
goodness,
well
have
this
we?
week. What
I saw your latest video. No,
I am not on TikTok.
Yeah,
but
neither one of us
I'm
are
not
on
either.
TikTok.
so many of Gen Z and younger people are on TikTok. What's going to happen, and what legal authority does Trump have to kind of force a sale and keep it going?
I've heard some say that he's going to overrule the Supreme Court. Those are not real words.
Right.
A president does not overrule the Supreme Court. But there are options here. Congress
Can
could
he do
act.
an executive order?
So, well, it's a Supreme Court decision, right? I mean, if
Okay.
you remember, when any president issues an executive order, the Supreme Court steps in and says no. They have the final word on this.
The high court, the high
Exactly.
decision. Yeah,
but the bottom line
country.
here is going to be what I think he may do is he may say, because things shut down on Sunday, and people are blaming Biden, saying, he should. Why is he turning this over to the new administration? People need to understand the DOJ; those folks resigned today. There's nobody working the office, and so come Sunday, there's nobody to do anything, and come Monday, it's a national, it's a federal holiday. So basically, Tuesday's the first day anything could happen to anybody, Google, whoever that's going to have these apps out there. That's the Trump administration. So it wasn't a slick one or anything done by the Biden administration. It's pretty much the way it has to be. The issue for them is the Supreme Court was very narrow in what it did. It's about TikTok, and basically they said there is no violation of the right to the freedom of speech. But now we're understanding these other Chinese companies are popping up. So I've sort of said this is going to be like a game of whack-a-mole, because maybe you knock down TikTok, but people are ready for Lemon 8, it's called, and Red something
Red
or other.
Note, yeah.
So there's all these other things coming up. So what's going to happen is Congress will likely have to step back in. But I think Trump will probably announce he's got some sort of deal with one of the billionaires who will be on the stage with him on Monday, and we'll see what he works out.
It's coming up on your show Sunday.
We're going to be talking about the inauguration on Sunday. I'm going to have Northwestern professor of history, Michael Allen, who's done so much writing on history of this. He'll talk about what we can expect from the inaugural address. And also from a historical perspective, people think that what we're in for under Trump is really different. He actually takes us back in time, and it may not be as different as you think from the way things were back in the Nixon days or something like that. So,
Pretty good tease.
yeah.
All right, and we will have Paul's insights and coverage all day long on
All
Monday
day long.
from Washington,
All
D.C.
night long.
The inauguration day, the inauguration balls where they may be playing some Lionel Richie.
Right.
And we'll have live reports, of course, from the Capitol and expert analysis. Our coverage begins on Monday at 9.
YMCA is what they're
YMCA, the
Right,
Village People.
right.
will be there,
Thank you,
yeah.
thank you. Carrie Underwood, too, I hear.
Yeah, she's performing.
Thank you.